Hey, welcome back. It is Colts Corner with myself, Kevin Bowen. Eddie Garrison is across the way. Eddie, how you doing, sir?
It's National Championship Day, Kev. I'm doing great.
Indeed, it is. Yeah, we are recording this on Monday, January 19th. Sean McDermott has just gotten fired, which is quite the NFL news. And obviously, locally, yes, it'll be Indiana and Miami tonight. Miami gives me crazy ex-girlfriend vibes.
Really?
Yeah.
Explain.
Boy, it could occasionally be fun if you wake up next to it, but if you take her home to mom, I don't know if that's necessarily the route you want to go.
Okay.
You follow me or no?
Kinda.
Like, don't they have three of the best wins we've seen in college football this year?
Yes, they do.
And they've also lost to
Could you say 4?
SMU and Louisville. Yeah, I guess 4. Yeah, if you want to throw Ole Miss. Yeah, honestly, I should probably throw Ole Miss in that group. But, certainly, Ohio State in the fashion they did at A&M. Yeah, I guess I should throw Ole Miss in there if I'm going to throw the Notre Dame game in there. So, yeah, I don't know. They're just I think it's a different test for Indiana, just with their individual talent. But I just think Indiana's so damn disciplined. They have a professional level of discipline to them.
Yeah.
Their strength is Miami's biggest weakness, discipline.
Uh-huh.
And so I think Indiana will definitely win, but I don't know. I think this might be a little closer than maybe some people are thinking.
That's what I've been saying to Jake Corey last week on our show from 12 to 3 on The Fan is that this IU team doesn't feel like a college program. It feels like a professional football team with the way they prepare, with the discipline that they have. They don't make many mistakes, and if they do, they know how to minimize damage control. That is the best way to put it. They know how to, control the damage and limit all the explosive plays. They don't make silly penalties. They don't turn the ball over, willy-nilly. And those are all things that Miami has done at various points this season.
Yeah, I feel like college games are largely decided by stupidity, whereas the NFL, it's a little bit more of like it's your own athletic execution mistakes, if that makes sense. It's not the amount of boneheaded penalties or whatever, stupid kicking stuff or dropping extra points. And now I'm trying to think back to all the Notre Dame losses this year that broke my heart.
Yeah. Kevin, coming up on today's pod, we'll talk about the Bob Cooter news, interviewing for the Philadelphia Eagles offensive coordinator job, run down the Colts free agents, get into a few Twitter questions, and then kind of preview the rest of the week. But before we jump into the Bob Cooter news, what were your overall thoughts of the second round of the playoffs yesterday and Saturday?
Well, obviously 2 great games, the first and the last one. You go back to that Bills-Broncos game. I thought one of the sneaky plays of the game that maybe isn't being talked about enough is I hated, and maybe Josh Allen checked to this, I hated them throwing a screen on 3rd and 8 right before they settled for that field goal to stretch it to 4. I thought that was a moment that if you score a touchdown there, you get it to 8, maybe 9, and if it gets to 9, it's over. And if it gets to 8, boy, it's a lot of pressure on Bo Nix and company to drive down the field. And now we're Sam Ehlinger 1 play away. I guess Sam Ehlinger made the right decision, did he not, in saying no to the Colts for those 4 games?
Yes, so.
So that obviously was kind of my general. Seattle, that was damn impressive what they did there.
Did you say no to them for the 4 games or, going all the way back to last year? Like at the end of the season and the offseason?
Oh, no. I think that was kind of a mutual parting of ways, I think. I don't know. That I bring that up because obviously it's the most recent, and that would have been a starting job in the NFL. So, as far as yesterday, I guess one more Bills thing I'll throw in there. I thought that post game scene was pretty cool, and I know for Bills fans are like, cool, that was heartbreaking, but I think at the time people knock professional sports. Yeah, these guys are just in it for the money; they don't care. Like you watch. Not just Josh Allen's emotion, but you watch Deion Dawkins' emotion, you watch Brandon Cook's emotion. And I don't know, maybe Sean McDermott acted in the way that he did because he knew this could come.
Or maybe he had told them.
He had told them what?
That he was getting fired.
Oh,
he already knew, and he was like, guys, this...
Yeah, I feel like that would have leaked, but I don't know, maybe not. And then again, yesterday, Houston's defense... Incredible. It just seemed like Stroud had the yips. There were signs of this, I think, kind of like late in the season, but not that. And I get, the weather and no Nico Collins and no Dalton Schultz, and they're banged up on their O-line, but that was very yippy. Just
Did Schultz leave hurt? I didn't watch that game.
Yeah, Schultz left hurt. It just, I don't know. I just, because, if Boutte doesn't make that crazy catch, I mean, they still are right in that game there, even late with all those turnovers. And then obviously Bears, Rams. I mean, what a wild, wild game. I thought that Caleb Williams' controller was broken when he didn't scramble left or right at the end. I'm like, is he just backing up and backing up and backing up? I'm like, this is like, some of those video games, the old school ones where you can't like scramble left or right there.
They did a great job of keeping contained and, making him work his way back. Just
absurd. And then, you get the 3 and out to start overtime. And then obviously DJ Moore's effort on that play, it's just a hair too risky on 2nd and 8. Even if you do throw that, I feel like Cam Curl was still generally in that area of, if you could just methodically kind of move your way there. But hey, shout out to Harrison Mevis. He was a part of the Colts kicker tryout back after Spencer Schrader, right?
Was he?
I believe he was one of the 8. Shout out Warsaw, Indiana. Shout out Penguin Point. Shout out Stonehenge Golf Course. Shout out the orthopedic capital of the world. Harrison Mevis there, the thicker kicker, sending them. So, yeah, pretty wild Final Four when you think about it, man.
Yeah. How about this? I came up with this all on my own. The Bears are open in Northern Indiana, but Northern Indiana just closed out the Bears.
Oh, man, Eddie Garrison. Did you trademark that?
No, I can't. I can't trademark that, no.
Did you see the Rams tweet?
I did.
I'm paraphrasing, but then they say it's a long walk back to Gary.
Something like that,
Something along those lines there. Pretty good by the Rams with that. So.
To me, Kev, right now for Buffalo, it just seems like they may promote Joe Brady as the head coach because I know he's being interviewed already by some teams that have head coach vacancies, and I think that what he's been able to do with Josh Allen, picking up right where Brian Daboll left off, and arguably has furthered that development with Josh Allen. I think they're just going to end up promoting him, and they'll figure out everything else from there.
Correct me if I'm wrong. Shane Steichen is the 3rd longest tenured coach in the AFC.
Yeah.
Andy Reid, Zach Taylor, and is that it?
Was D'Amico Ryans the same coaching cycle as Shane?
Yeah, Ryans was the same. Again, you have others that were in that 2023 cycle, but how wild is that?
That's actually pretty nuts.
And hell, Zach Taylor, a lot of people thought Zach Taylor should have or could have been fired. I mean, it's just insane, man.
Yep. All right, let's dive into today's pod. We'll start with the Jim Bob Cooter news. Not sure which of the senior NFL insiders had it, but it is reported that he will be interviewing for that offensive coordinator vacancy out in Philadelphia with the Eagles. And no surprise there, Kevin. It just seems like whenever they have a vacancy, they hit up Shane Steichen's coaching staff.
Yeah, and obviously there's history there, I should say, with
that
with Nick Sirianni. But I think any question you have, especially with offensive coordinators, is how many openings are we now at? 10? Is that right? With this Bills one?
Yeah.
Correct me if I'm wrong. I didn't see Jim Bob Cooter's name anywhere. And I mean, how many people are getting interviewed for some of these jobs? 10, 12, 15? Like his name hasn't popped up at all in these head coaching. And you would think if you were a part of an offense that put up a historic 2 months, you'd at least get an interview. So, I think some of this just rooted in, hey, man, are you a play caller or are you not? So, is that something that he feels like he needs to go and do? And would that be something that pops up here? And again, I think the history of him, not a lot of history, but he does have some history there. Could be at play here. So, outside of that, I guess Anarumo potentially Titans? Is that still the only one? I don't know. Would he pop up here in Buffalo?
Yeah, obviously with Tennessee, because the New York Giants position has been filled with John Harbaugh.
Right. So I think that, could be a potentially dangling carrot here in the offseason. But, outside of that, seems like it's pretty status quo. The Colts have got to be one of the quietest teams of the entire offseason. I mean, when you think about it, you got 10 openings and you got, 14 teams in the playoffs. And so, we'll await that. But unless you got anything else to add, Eddie, I said we get into these free agents.
Yeah, one thing to add with Jim Bob Cooter, obviously, we give him an opportunity to call plays.
Right.
Because he currently does not do that with the Indianapolis Colts, and Nick Sirianni does not do that anymore with the Eagles. So,
and he did call some plays for Stafford in Detroit, so there is some history there. So it's not totally foreign to him. Do you think the Bills could trade for a coach?
Ooh, trade for Mike T?
What are the Bills looking for? Wasn't McDermott the leader of men?
Kinda.
That'll be fascinating, man.
Did he take over play calling there for the defense toward the end of the year?
Did he?
I thought I saw that, but I could be wrong there.
I wasn't sure of that. I mean, it's kind of crazy how how many playoff wins does Josh Allen have?
Only one on the road, though.
Right, but I mean, still, you got to do something there in those home games.
It's very comparable to Elway.
Yeah. Boy, I just keep on coming back to, can you imagine if Twitter was alive for Peyton Manning's start of his NFL career?
That rookie year? Whew.
Or Peyton didn't win his first playoff game 6 years in the league. Can you imagine?
Yeah.
People want to be done with C.J. Stroud, right? C.J. Stroud's won 3 playoff games?
Yeah.
And, the defense hasn't been the defense throughout. Obviously, this year they were, but still.
Boy, 2 of those losses for Stroud, he's looked like not good.
Gosh, it's just wild, man, these quarterback narratives.
Yeah. Head coach vacancies, Arizona, Atlanta, now filled with Kevin Stefanski, Baltimore, Cleveland, Las Vegas, Miami. That one seems like it's going to be Jeff Hafley. The New York Giants, filled with John Harbaugh. Pittsburgh, Tennessee, and now Buffalo. So there you go. Those are the ones that we will be monitoring here over the next week or so. Let's dive into it, Kevin. You wrote this up on 1075thefan.com. Who are the Colts free agents in 2026? We're going to do this by position group. Obviously, you have to start with the most important position on any football team, that being the quarterback position, and Daniel Jones. Yeah,
I mean, this seems like a very mutual marriage that wants to continue, which is probably not what you would say about Anthony Richardson here. I think my only question is just, what does it look like? Is it, the full franchise tag guarantee seems like a lot. If he, had some Achilles rehab that didn't go according to plan, are you looking at all of a sudden, committing, 40-something million on that franchise tag for the guarantee, and he doesn't give you a full season? I can't see that. And, the Colts, again, publicly, it's one of the more public, talks about a contract that I can recall for the Colts. So they feel like it's going to be something long-term. Now, what does long-term mean? 2, 3? Does Carl Gordon step in? Is there any other team out there? If you're going to do franchise tag for Alec Pierce, and that means Jones hits the open market, should we worry? Is Minnesota a team that, could be in play here? I believe Minnesota had offered more than Indy last offseason. Could be wrong on that, but I believe that is the case. So, yeah, again, I get there's a mutual, Jones obviously played pretty well here. And so I do think there's a general mutual wanting this thing to continue. But exactly what it looks like contract, is it just simply Baker Mayfield, Sam Darnold, those contracts we saw recently? Or is it something a little less due to the Achilles, or something a little bit more, due to Jones did reach a really high level here for a couple months. But yeah, Daniel Jones, I expect him to be the Colts starting quarterback, of course, in 2026. Yeah, if you had to rank these free agents, it'd be like a 1A and a 1B situation, with Daniel Jones and free agent number 2 being Alec Pierce. Yeah, and that's exactly how I would put it, Eddie. I think that's well. And I assume this is where you would use the tag. I think it could get real competitive real quick on the open market with Pierce. And Eddie, let's play the math game for a second. Colts right now are north of 50 million, right? Like 52, 53 or something, I think is their cap space. Well, if you do the franchise tag for Pierce, 28 million, and then let's call Jones, 35, just to call it a number? Yeah. Okay. 35 plus 28, 3 carry the 1, that's 63 million. What did we just say their open cap space is? Was it 40 something? I thought it was a little north of 50. I'd have to look. Okay, I keep seeing different numbers on that. Let's call it 50. You're 13 million over right there. So again, you're going to have to do some things that I just keep that in mind with the rest of this list that we're about to read off here. And you're going to have to do some things to, make room for more of that from a cap space standpoint. So I just think you have to bring Pierce back. He's the hardest. He's got the hardest trait to replace in the wide receiver room. He's 3 or 4 years younger than Michael Pittman Jr. I don't think that can be ignored. He's really been very durable outside of the couple of concussions that he's had. So yeah, and he also rounded out more of that route tree, if you are going to kind of nitpick some of his game here. So just more curious, honestly, what it looks like if it is indeed going to be the cap or the franchise tag.
Yeah. It'll be interesting to see because the maneuverability that they have is obviously Michael Pittman Jr.
Right. Right. But again, I think you're going to have to do more than just that. I mean, let's say, you do try and reduce that from a cap hit standpoint, then what about the other stuff? That's, I think, what you have to think about.
Yeah, the other player who has been a part of the Colts for a long time, longest tenured Colt, right? Mo Alley-Cox?
I believe that is the case, yes.
And the other tight end being Drew Ogletree?
Yes, I believe that is the case. So let's go with the tight ends here for a second. One thing to note about Mo is, Eddie, if I'm not mistaken, he has not missed a game since 2020. So as he has reached, into his early 30s, not missing a game since 2020, pretty crazy. And, I think the arrival of Tyler Warren just allows all these other tight ends to slot into their positions better, slot into their, depth chart roles. You're not asking too much of them. Alley-Cox did play a little bit more than Ogletree. Obviously, Ogletree is younger. So, to me, is this kind of a vet minimum situation? You obviously need some depth at tight end. Again, Will Mallory's skill set is not necessarily these guys and their skill sets. So I think that's another factor you have to keep in mind. But I could easily see either or both of these guys coming back. Again, they have to be on very cheap deals. Alley-Cox used to make decent tight end money.
Yeah.
And then I think they've signed him for a little bit cheaper of that here recently, and that makes total sense to me here. So, yes, Drew Ogletree, Mo Alley-Cox, both of them obviously 2 and 3 on your depth chart. Ogletree's always one I've been curious about. Is there a little bit more as a receiver there? I didn't really do a lot of that this season, but
yeah, touchdown, didn't he?
A couple tight ends. Yeah, where was that? That was a great catch. Where was that? Seattle? Kansas City?
It wasn't Seattle because they didn't score a touchdown.
There you go. Well, didn't they? Josh Downs? Didn't he have a touchdown in Seattle? Rivers went nuts.
Oh, yeah, you're right.
I think it might have been Kansas City now I think about it.
Yeah, you're right. It was back in the end zone.
For Ogletree.
Yeah. His first catch of the year was that touchdown, if I remember correctly.
Yeah.
Would you anticipate one or both being brought back?
I don't. That's a good question. I might just say one just to say it, but you could talk me into two.
Yeah, I would probably lean towards one just because they offer the same thing, right? Although Mo's a bit thicker, I feel.
Yeah, he's probably a little bit more of the blocking type, but again, that offense used a lot of 3 tight ends, all 3 of these a good amount here. And, Warren stayed very, very healthy too throughout his 17 games.
Yeah. We've got a handful of offensive linemen, or a pair, I should say, a handful of linemen in general between the two sides of the football. Braden Smith and Danny Pinter are your 2 offensive lineman free agents. It's like it seems like Braden Smith will not be retained, Kevin, just because of the fact that you don't want to pay that much money. They're already kind of tight as it is with cap space. Injuries have kind of been a big staple of his career. And Jalen Travis was just drafted last year as your future at that position.
If you've heard it once, you've heard it 1,000 times, Eddie. What's the phrase I like to use?
There's no USC pretty boy.
Well, that is definitely one I like to use. Pass the torch.
Yep.
Some spots you got to pass the torch, and you hope that it doesn't look like USA track and field in the Olympics. They always seem to drop the baton. So you'll try to have seamless. And you know what? Major credit to Chris Ballard. Linebacker and O-line, Chris Ballard can really, really draft. And I look at the Ryan Kelly torch to Tanner Bortolini. I look at the Will Fries torch to Matt Gonzalez as pretty seamless. I still think they view Gonzalez more as a guard. And then I think Travis would then be your your right tackle. Remember, Travis did the left tackle thing for one of those games there late in the season when Ryman was out. But yes, this is my assumption. You laid out pretty much all the reasons why, Eddie. I think Braden Smith has been a very, very solid, probably one of the better Ballard draft picks, to be honest with you. But I also think it's probably time. Financially more than anything. I get the injuries have crept up. It was neck concussion late in the year. That might have been kind of his first real ailment this season. But, that it just seems like time there. As far as Pinter is concerned, he's signed these 1-year deals now a lot recently. He had that one injury in August a couple years back. that ended his season. So, again, depth, interior, way, way low on the priority list. But Danny Pinter, the former 5th-round pick, back to free agency.
Yep. Now we head to the defensive side of the football, starting up front. Kwity Paye, Samson Ebukam, both of those defensive ends. Tyquan Lewis, I guess, technically also a defensive end. Neville Gallimore, a defensive tackle. Eric Johnson, the second, a defensive tackle. Those are your defensive linemen that are free agents.
Okay, let's go D tackles first. Gallimore and Johnson. Gallimore, I thought, was a nice find.
I agree.
Played pretty good football for you coming off the bench. Him and Adetomiwa Adebare, I thought, did a nice job this season. So I could be good with running it back. Johnson was frequently the guy inactive when JT Tuimoloau was not. Those two kind of flip-flop. Do you want the bigger dude or the defensive end there? So we'll see that. As far as defensive end is concerned, Kwity Paye, Tyquan Lewis, Samson Ebukam. Should any of them be back?
I don't think any of them should. Maybe Tyquan, just because of how much of a voice he is in the locker room and how much guys respect him. But outside of that, I don't think I would bring any of them back.
The one pause I have is Ballard did offer some press conference praise for Ebukam late in the season before the knee injury. Do you try to look at that and say, hey, he's now 2 years removed from the torn Achilles? I'm probably grasping, to be honest with you there, but I just thought I would mention it. Obviously, if you're trying to get younger and faster on defense, not a lot of these guys define that. So I hear you out on the Lewis aspect of it, but boy, I think if you are committed to doing things differently defensively to some degree, to me, it almost seems like all three have got to walk. Now, again, if all three walk, that's a ton of playing time you open up. And who all of a sudden is ascending into that playing time?
Yeah.
Tuimoloau can only take on so much. So, this is kind of my rough January 19th estimate of the offseason, Eddie, but I kind of view it like this. Can you go out, can you find a starting defensive end opposite Latu? Okay, that's probably where I'd put one. Can you go out and find a starting linebacker? Okay, that's two.
Yep.
If I'm going to go to a third item on the list, it would be, could you find another in the front seven? You could talk me into some stuff. You could talk me into another linebacker. You could talk me into another defensive end. You could talk me into a defensive tackle, given the ages of Buckner and Stewart. But that's kind of how I view it. Definitely defensive end, probably linebacker, and then is there one more in the front seven?
Mm-hmm.
Now, when we get to safety here, I think that's one of the more difficult questions to answer this offseason, but that's how I view D-line.
Now, do you say starting linebacker because Jermaine Pratt will not be retained since he's a free agent and the future of Mr. Zaire Franklin is a bit murky?
It's a great question. I almost kind of view it as an either-or situation. Obviously, Franklin to be the much pricier of the two. I thought Pratt did a nice job coming over here. Obviously, the Louis Anarumo history benefits him. I think there's a big fan mutual interest between the two. So, yeah, that's one I'm a little torn on. Again, what does it look like? Would he take a bit of a hometown discount for lack of a better term because he has the connection with Anarumo? So, the easy thing to do, Eddie, is just send everybody packing.
Yeah.
But, who's waiting in the wing? Is Jalen Carlisle still a thing? Or no?
Great question.
So
also, it makes no sense to me. Now, this is totally different and not related to what we're talking about in terms of free agents, but the fact that, Chris Ballard says they need to get younger and they need to get faster. One of those two things doesn't jive with the defensive coordinator.
Younger, correct.
Yeah.
Correct. And again, this is where, Eddie, when you get into the, draft picks, the second round, the third rounder, you need, think back to the 2022 draft. Pierce, Jelani Woods, Ryman, Cross. Okay? Those are the 4 picks in the first 3 rounds. If I had to ask you to summarize those 4 picks, Pierce, Woods, Ryman, Cross, how would you summarize it?
Pierce, Ryman, and Cross?
Pierce, Woods is the other one. So those are the 4 picks. If you just had to summarize that draft, the early part of that draft.
Thought he did a really good job.
I agree with you. But then if we took it a step further, and if I said...
You also have to remember that they traded a pick for Nick Cross.
Well, I'm actually not going there for a second. But if I took a step further and said, what would you have said after their rookie seasons?
Well, for sure, you would have said that, Ballard messed up most of those picks. I would say that Ryman was the one that wasn't a miss at the time.
Right, but even him, you weren't 100% sure on it. Like Pierce, obviously, you weren't 100% sure. Cross wasn't really playing. Woods might have been, honestly, the best one out of those rookies. So I bring that up just to say, with how you're banking on this year and the high sense of urgency and the need for instant impact, you can't have a 2022 draft class. The 2022 draft class eventually got there. But in year one, it didn't get there. I'm going to steal a phrase from Curt Cignetti. This draft class has got to be about production more than potential.
Yeah.
Period. And that goes against a lot of Chris Ballard's MO, frankly, when it comes to drafting.
Yeah.
But that's just the reality of where you're at. And this all comes back to the Lou Anarumo point that you just brought up about, is he willing to get younger and play younger? That's a different animal to it.
Yeah, the final pair of free agents for the Colts are both at safety, Nick Cross and Rodney Thomas II.
How many times do you forget Rodney Thomas II is on the Colts?
Well, I'd see him a handful of times on special teams making tackles, so.
Because I swear there would be days at practice.
Once every 3 games.
Gosh, there he is, number 25. I forgot about it. I think Nick Cross is the most interesting free agent on the list.
I agree.
You drafted him knowing that there probably would need to be some ascent to his game. Has he ascended? I think he has. But at the same time, when you look at safety right now, didn't you already pay Cam Bynum notable money?
Yeah.
Can you afford to pay 2 safeties notable money? Now look around the NFL, Eddie.
Is it a premium or a luxury?
Right. It's a great point. Now look around the NFL. The safety market has been a heavily debated thing.
Like, do you need those cookies or do you want those cookies?
Well, it's always one for me, man. Lord knows I don't need them, but man, I just cave. No one has worse peer pressure than I. Is the safety market robust? Think back to Julian Blackmon's free agency a few years ago. He was pissed, right? He thought it'd be a little bit more robust for him. And Blackmon is a field, free safety. Cross is probably more of a box guy, which I think the box safeties are a little bit more of a dying breed. So I think these are all factors. Now, Lou Anarumo's defense, when they were good in Cincinnati, didn't they have pretty good safety play?
Yeah, with Jesse Bates. Is Von Bell their other safety?
And the last thing I would add on this is if you let Nick Cross walk, who's your starting safety next year?
Yeah.
That might be the driest position in terms of depth of any on the roster. So that's where I'm very torn on it. Now, again, Cross is going to get double-digit million, right?
It's a pretty lengthy safety class.
Is it?
Yeah.
In free agency, which is another thing probably going
Kyle
against Nick Cross.
Duggar, Jimmy Ward's a free agent, Andre Sisco, Kevin Byard, Geno Stone, Cameron Curl. Did you say Jimmy Ward? How old is he?
Yeah.
34 and a half.
Dear Lord.
Cam Curl with the Rams who had that pick, in the playoff game. Reed Blankenship's another one. So, there's some guys on here who are Andre Wingard, Julian Blackmon, obviously. There are some guys on here that are starters that will be available as well.
So, again, safety to me is a really difficult one. And, again, how do you try and create more on the cap front? I think that is a huge, huge question here as we get into more of the offseason.
Yeah. You ready for Twitter questions? Do you have anything else to add on the Colts free agents?
No. I think I'm good, man. You got any more?
I've got nothing. So let's dive into today's Twitter questions. Only 4 to get to. Zach, what if Carly Gordon knows the Colts are not an attractive job right now with the lack of quarterback / draft capital / aging roster and is choosing to run it back with Ballard for another season or 2 to improve the optics of the job for potential general manager or head coach candidates in the future off seasons? As much as most of the year all want Ballard gone, the Colts are not a top job this cycle and would not get the John Harbaugh caliber coach or general manager.
Eddie, I think it's a really interesting point Zach brings up. And let me start here. Do you think this should be a major factor in how organizations operate?
Should what be a major factor?
What the pool of candidates looks like? Or do you think it should be more rooted in, you need to evaluate your own in-house person and, just find somebody.
So how many openings have come after the season ended? Miami? Buffalo?
Yeah, I mean, it weren't the only two interim coaches we had were Tennessee and New York. Is that right?
Right, but I'm saying like after that Black Monday, so like week number 2 of the offseason for most of the league. Because you see most of the firings on that Monday after week 18.
Yeah.
So what, you got Pittsburgh, Buffalo, Miami. So there's 3 of the 10, right? That all came after the year. Post start regular or postseason onward.
Yeah, I think that sounds right.
So when she made the decision in week 17 to tell Chris Ballard and Shane Steichen they were being brought back, you think she had any inclination that those jobs would be open?
Yeah. There's part of it, it's like, well, when you're in those positions, part of it is, hey, you need to be able to have a pulse around the league, gauge a little bit of that, but I get some of this is, pretty secretive from around the NFL. I'm kind of brought up to the IU basketball state of it right now, Eddie, of like, what if they would have fired Mike Woodson 1 year earlier? Is Dusty May in Bloomington? I think that is like something that's kind of at play here. And, Zach lays out reasons that I do sit here and kind of nod my head, but it's like, well, damn, is that a reason to retain though? And I mean, how much of a better job are they next year? Are you better? Your core is even more aging theoretically. Like, let's say you get to this, let's say 8-9 again, miss the playoffs again.
Mm-hmm.
You still don't have a first round pick. I would argue the tradable assets on your roster are older. How much of it is a better situation? I guess you're one step closer to having your first round pick again. So maybe that's a better aspect of it, but I don't know. Zach, I guess to answer it, I don't really think the lack of pool of candidates, if you want to label it that, was at play. I don't think that was necessarily on her mind. Now, again, is there a financial element of paying staffs, multiple staffs, GM, scouting staff, coach, head coaching staff? Yeah, I do think that is something that potentially could be at play here. So, those are all questions that I think are fair, but I don't know. I'm just kind of torn on you retain because you're disgusted with what's out there. Like, I find it hard to believe that, like, 10 openings and are all 10 of these going to be swings and misses? I mean, not all, obviously all of them are going to be hits, but, who was the last head coach hired last cycle? Was it Liam Cohen?
Yep.
It turned out to be a pretty good coach, right?
Yeah.
So, it's a fair point Zach brings up. I don't think it's necessarily at play here for Carly Ursay, to be totally honest with you. And I'm also not totally sold on the, what all of a sudden makes the Colts attracted 1 to 2 years down the road.
Atlanta fired their coach, and their quarterback situation is just as up in the air as the Colts, and they don't have a first-round pick this year.
Right. Kevin Stefanski on paper seems to be a good hire. Again, you can debate that, but yeah.
You think the decision for retaining all parties for the Colts is the fact that there's not the slam dunk hire out there?
No. To be clear, I don't. What I'm questioning is, should that be a factor? Like, there's plenty of evidence to fire Chris Ballard.
Yeah.
Plenty. But should that be more at stake? And again, right. we play the coaching hire game seemingly every offseason. Who's the can't miss prospect? Who is, the best candidate? All of that. And how many times did the Belichick tree get tapped into and it never worked out? It just, who would have thought that Dan Campbell would have been a successful head coach? The Colts interviewed him in 2018 with Frank Reich and Leslie Frazier there. So I think coaching hires are very, very difficult, but I don't know. I'm probably rambling a little bit here, so let's just move on before I continue to ramble.
Isaac would like to know, do you think Riley Leonard could actually develop into a starting quarterback?
I think it's possible. I don't I'm still probably on the pause, and if he can be a starting level franchise quarterback. I'm sure I echoed this when Riley Leonard was drafted. I think he has some ideal developmental traits. He's tough. He's a good leader. He can make plays with his legs. He wants to be good. All of that is really coveted. But again, he also fell to round 6 for a reason. I think mostly it comes down to, can he deliver from the pocket routinely? Which, again, small sample size. I thought in week 17 he did that more than anything. And another question for Riley Leonard too, Eddie, is like, can he stay healthy? His collegiate career had a lot of injuries.
Yeah.
And if you look at his NFL career so far, I mean, he got banged up in the Jacksonville game, and I felt like there were some times in that Houston game he was kind of limping around. So, again, that's more of a bigger picture question if he's starting, 2-3 months in a row there. But yeah, Isaac, I don't think you put eggs in the Riley Leonard basket of like, oh my gosh, give him a chance to start. But I think you want to continue to keep him and continue to try and grow him and, see what he can turn into. Because again, there's a lot of traits that you like about him. So, yeah.
Yeah. 2 questions left. Brett, KB, put yourself in the shoes of Carly Ursay-Gordon for a moment and try to think through what the franchise is selling fans on in next year and the following season. It's a genuine question because I don't think I felt this dejected as a Colts fan since the day Andrew Luck retired. Personally, despite the horrible streak of bad luck in the back half of the season, I feel there's just no way to invigorate life into the fan base with the current regime.
Well, yeah, I mean, what you're trying to sell on is 2 months, right?
I mean, they're 8-2, right? That's
what you're trying to sell on. That, and what's the realistic window now? I think we talked about this era in like a Sauce Gardner trade window. And now I'm kind of looking at it as like you have 1, maybe stretch it to 2. That's probably how I would view this window.
Yeah.
And that has less to do with like Sauce Gardner than has to do with, I just think your core is getting old. That's how I would look at it. Older. So again, how much of this can be a big thing? And the Daniel Jones injury situation, that could obviously put a dent into how much of the 2026 season is, window open for this. But yeah, I mean, this general tone is probably what I hear a lot. Now, I've also heard from some people that are like, wait a minute, if you strip it down, you're going to get a lot worse. Basically by making this move is Carly Ursay-Gordon saying, hey, we're at least keeping the floor higher. That's probably true, but this is maybe where I differ from some of my colleagues of like, hey, if you all of a sudden, really strip it down and fire everybody, you're going to get bad real quick. To me, the rebuild ain't too bad if you can get back there.
Yeah.
I think New England probably happily did the Drake May thing. I think they're pretty content with where they're at right now. So I would argue 11 years without a division title, 8 years without a playoff win, 5 years without a playoff appearance. I would argue that grass is pretty damn brown.
Yeah. The final question is from Colton, and we kind of already answered one of these. What is the most you would pay to re-sign Alec Pierce and Nick Cross?
I'd pay a good amount to re-sign Pierce. Again, would I franchise tag it and then maybe try and long-term deal it down the road? That's probably the route I would go. Cross, I'm just finding it hard, man. What was Bynum per year? Was it $15 million? Was it 4 for $60 for Bynum? And Ward was 3 for $60?
4 for $60 for Bynum, yes.
Yeah, I'm finding it hard to get to that level.
$30 million guaranteed.
Again, if you're doing this math here, what do we say? 63 earlier, Jones 35, Pierce 28. Let's just call Cross 10. That's $73 million. I mean, that's $20 million over your current cap. Right?
Yeah, 41.7 in terms of cap.
Yeah, I thought I saw a number that was north of 50, but still, I mean, if you want to go off that number, that's even worse. But if you go off mine, it's there. I think one thing you have to expect too is this. You went out last offseason and you addressed you spent big with Cam Ward. You spent big with Mooney Ward and Cam Bynum.
Yep.
My question is, can you add the equivalent of those two to the front? 7, to the front 7. Can you go out? Can you find a Ward? Can you find a Bynum for the front 7?
Yeah.
And again, I know it's not exactly apples to apples. Perhaps one of that is an instant draft pick, which, of course, is you're banking on a lot when it's pick 50-something or if it's pick, whatever the third round pick's going to be there. But that would be my question for this offseason.
Yeah.
So.
To conclude the pod, Kevin, something that we didn't touch on in the previous 38 minutes, there was some Colts news on Friday that they will no longer be doing training camp from Grand Park in Westfield starting in 2027. They will join 26 other NFL teams in having their own training camp from their own complex, for lack of a better word.
Yeah. Yeah, I was a little bummed by this. I love that the Colts did this for so long. And I get they were in the minority. Honestly, the Colts deserve credit for how long they held on to the off-site camp. I mean, Eddie, you've been at Grand Park. It's incredible the amount of access.
Yes.
Whether, if they were in the big stadium at Rose-Hulman or the big stadium in Anderson, you got a track between you in the field. I mean, you're a good ways away. Whereas when you're at Grand Park, I mean, you're from me to you to some of these players at times here. So, and it was very affordable. I mean, the majority of those practices are free. You're paying $5-10 for parking. I mean, that's just crazy access that you have there. From what I understand, this was originally a 10-year deal, I believe, through 2028. And I think starting in 2022, Eddie, the Colts had 18-month opt-outs. So that's what they're executing here, I assume. This is the 18-month opt-out. You're committing to 2026, but you won't be there in 2027. So it ends, I guess, a little bit early on it. I mean, again, I understand logistically, technologically, we're seeing the rest of the NFL. I was always struck by this. It was always very impressive to me when other NFL teams would come here for joint practices, how much they'd be blown away by the facility. I mean, the Colts seemingly had a joint practice every year at Grand Park with a variety of teams. So again, I get it. I understand it. COVID year was back at the complex. I want to say 2017, maybe Ballard's first year, I think, was also at the complex. Pagano's last year. I don't know how much this is a financial thing. I don't pretend to know everything on that aspect of it. But yeah, I'm just a little bummed. I get it. I understand it. Again, the Colts deserve credit because they held on for so long. But I wish NFL teams would do this more.
Yeah.
What do you think they do? They do like a practice at Butler, a practice at UND, a practice at Lucas Oil?
I'm not sure. Lucas Oil would probably be back on the table, right? They used to do one of those anyway.
I feel like they did one of those in the spring, too. I wouldn't mind seeing like a reward the small colleges in town. I wouldn't mind seeing like a 3-night practice rotation. Marion, Butler, UND. Or hell, if you want to go to the north side, go to Carmel or Westfield.
Yeah.
And, just do that. I think those are really cool venues, some of those college venues.
Yeah.
And I think that could be fun for, people from around town.
Especially how much of a success that night practice was this past year.
Yeah. And you do 3 of those. And I get also training camps are starting to shrink, like the sheer numbers.
Yeah.
Of practice. I mean, how many did they have this year? Like 12?
Yeah.
So, that is at play as well.
Final score prediction for tonight, Miami, IU.
Yeah, again, I think Miami's girlfriend crazy. I think they keep it entertaining. I thought Indiana would cruise Alabama, roll Alabama, frankly. I thought they would win comfortably Oregon. Obviously, I don't want to pretend I expected 30-point wins, but and now I'm kind of going the reverse. Now I'm like, and maybe this is just because we've talked about this game endlessly, Eddie. It's like one of those
pessimism
it's just
behind IU football.
But didn't Miami? I mean, if you want to compare common opponent, and I've got a buddy of mine who works for the Miami athletic department, so he's been in my ear a lot, and he keeps on bringing up this. Let's compare the Ohio State games. Who beat Ohio State better, more emphatically? Miami, right?
Right.
Now, to one opponent. Why should I put so much stock into that.
And you're coming off the week off or the month off for Ohio State.
Yeah, was that at play there? But I just think Toney. I know it sounds very simple, but like
Malachi Toney.
I really like Mark Fletcher, and of course Bain and Mesidor. I mean, they just have some individual dudes that can go flip a game.
Yeah,
or flip a quarter. If you don't want to say game, they could flip a series. Whereas I think, Indiana for the most part, yes, you've obviously hit some big plays with Becker and things like that. But Indiana's a little bit more on the methodical side, driving the football. But I'll say 27-23 IU.
And it's the most experienced quarterback they'll face.
Yeah, but I'm not sold on Beck.
I know.
I'm still not. I know.
He's seen a lot of football.
He just gives me bad vibes.
Yeah?
I'm being too mean to him.
Yeah?
I'll go 27-23. What do you got?
I was going 27-24.
Oh, okay. So you and I are in the same boat here.
Yeah.
Okay.
Although I
assume you're picking Indiana?
I am, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
He's Eddie Garrison. I'm Kevin Bowen. Everybody have a great week. Monday, Tuesdays, again, we'll continue to shoot for that throughout the off season, and we'll talk to you next week.